everybody can hear me. It's a small room. So there's a lot of you that I know, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Eric Tay. And myself, Sue, my wife, Samuel, and Emily have been coming to this church for the past, 1.5, 2 years. And we listened to a lot of sermons that Pastor Steve given, all of which are very good, of course. And I remember not too long ago, one of the sermons he gave, he talked about the average number of time that it takes the person to hear the gospel before they accept Jesus Christ. You guys remember how many times that was?
7.2.
7.2, is that right? I don't remember, that's why I asked you. Yeah, 7.2. So I remember thinking to myself, that's not a lot. That's going to church 7 times. I'm like, man, what's wrong with me? I'm like, I first heard about Jesus 18 years ago. 18 years. So I'm like, man, it's a long journey. Okay, so when I was a young man in college, in my 20s, what I did was I would have hours and hours of arguments and debate with my friend Tom. Tom was the devoted Catholic. And I would try to use science to convince him that God doesn't exist. I was an atheist. And Tom would get really mad at me. And he would turn red. And one day he said, Eric, I know deep in my heart one day you're going to be a Christian. You're going to accept God.
Amen.
I guess he's right. But the thing is that we didn't talk much about God. So I didn't go to church or anything like that. So I kind of just chugged along and finished college and then went to medical school. So for those of you who don't know the path to being a doctor, you go to undergraduate for 4 years, then you go to medical school for 4 years, and then residency for 3 years, and then fellowship. So anyway, I graduated college, and then I went to medical school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I was there the first day. I was really excited. I'm like looking at the roster, and I saw my name, Eric Tay. I'm like, oh man, I worked really hard. I made it. I was proud of myself. And I saw underneath my name, Grace Tay. Someone with the exact same last name. I'm like, what's going on? I thought I was only Tay and Tom. I felt kind of threatened. And I'm like, I gotta meet this Grace Tay. So it turns out because we have the same last name, we went to the same lab together, so we had a lot of class. So I got to know her well. And Grace was one of the smartest, kindest person, and a very devoted Christian. So Grace is like, yeah, everyone, you come to church, fellowship. And I was thinking, I'm single, and I'm desperate. So maybe I'll meet some girls at church. So I'm like, sure, why not? So I went, and I went to church a couple of times, fellowship a few times. But at that time, religion and God was not really important to me. It was like the 500th thing in my mind. Okay, it wasn't important to me. So I kept chugging along, I was still kind of agnostic, and graduated medical school, and then went to residency in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I stayed in the same place. And then one day, I had a long day, I was tired, I went to sleep, and I had a weird, strange dream. Really weird dream. And in the dream, I dreamt about God. Okay, clearly it was God. And God in the dream said, Eric, there was something you need to do. I'm like, what, God? And I woke up. I'm like, God, it's funny. You didn't tell me what I was supposed to do. I need a sense of humor. So then I talked to my buddy Dan, who was my roommate, who was a Christian. I'm like, Dan, does God talk to you and communicate to you through dreams? He's like, no, Aaron, you smoking pot or something? Like, God doesn't talk to you in dreams. You talk to God through Jesus. I'm like, oh, okay, well, weird random dream, right? Religion wasn't important to me. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So I just kept chugging along. And eventually I met my beautiful and cute girl named Sue. And then we got married, and eventually we settled. Samuel, my son, he's a runt. He's small. So I'm like, I'm worried that he's going to be picked on and be bullied. So I'm like, let's sign him up to karate, martial arts. So he can defend himself, be like Charles there, defend himself. So eventually we found a place called Kuksu, which taught Korean martial arts. So we met Jean and Charles, who took us here to this church. And I attended the first, meeting, listened to Pastor Steve serve, and I'm like, man, he's good. He's good. So I kept coming back. But I kept chugging along. I heard about God and everything, but still hasn't accepted Jesus. And then one day I was working, and then I was really tired. It was lunchtime, so I shut the door. I left the light on. I pretended I was working, but I took a nap. Okay, I took a nap. And in the nap, I had another dream. And guess what I dreamed about? God, guess what exactly? Anybody? Come on, guess. Guess what I dreamed about? I'm sorry? Yeah, that's what I wanted, but no. That wasn't what I dreamed about. And the dream was heaven and hell. Okay, it was just real short seconds, not 6 seconds. And first was heaven. It's kind of like a bright light, not blinding light, but very joyful, very comforting, more joy than you can imagine. And then there was hell. Okay, cold, dark, just depressing, and just a really, really bad feeling. And then I woke up. I'm like, man, God gets to the point. So one day I talked to Pastor Steve. I told him, Pastor Steve, I had this dream about, heaven and hell and how it felt like. And I think he said something like, he looked at me and said something like, so what's the problem again? So, translation, Eric, you idiot. God's trying to tell you something, don't you get it? But, I was kind of starting to believe, but not quite. I was not ready. Okay? And then it's time to buy a house. So me and Sue were looking. And for those of you who hasn't bought a house recently, the housing market is crazy. So houses get bought up quickly. There's multiple offers. People pay over listing price. So we are really frustrated. 2-3 months goes by, no houses, no contract, and then we saw this really nice house. Sue saw it. She showed it to me. I'm like, let's look at it this afternoon. So we went and looked at it. It was a beautiful house. The outside was nice. It's big. Inside is nice. And the back had a nice golf course view. I love houses. Yeah, I love houses with golf course view. I mean, I don't play golf, but I love houses with golf course view. So we're like, yeah, let's put in an offer. So we put in an offer that same day. But unfortunately, somebody already had a contract with the house. So, I was depressed. I was sad. So then I remember Pastor Steve said when he bought his house, he prayed to God about the offer price. And then he got the house. So I'm like, Pastor Steve's a smart guy, right? He's a good-looking guy. And he prayed and he got the house. Maybe there's something to this prayer thing that everybody talks about. So then I prayed. So I prayed to God. I'm like, dear Lord, thank you for blessing me and my family. I really like this house. Really. Lord, please help me. So nothing happened. I'm like, oh, okay, God, ignore me. So I kept going, and then we were looking at a house, and a week later, my realtor got a call. And it's from the realtor of that house. And apparently what happened was, the guy who bought the house, his company was going to have him come to the Woodlands to work. But the last minute, they changed him and moved him overseas. What's the chance of that? Coincidence? Maybe, don't know. So eventually we got an inspector. He looked at the house. The roof was in bad shape. we're like, man, the owner is not going to give us thousands of dollars to buy this house. The owner just has plenty of options. There's a lot of offer. So we backed out of the house. So we kept going. Another house came along. Real nice, beautiful house, good location. So we put in an offer. This time we offer over listing price. And then we got the offer. They came with us. And then we had an inspector look at the house. Roofing problem again. Bad roof. Okay, it has to be replaced. I'm like, oh, again? The same thing. I'm like, well, you know what? Let's just go back to them and ask them for the money to replace the roof. So we're like, okay, $9,000 to replace the roof. Like, he's not going to go for it. He's not going to go for it. So then the owner came back and said, no, we want our roofer for a second opinion. But at that time, we were running out of time because the option period was ending. So for anyone who hasn't bought a house, the option period is the time you get about 10 days where you can back out from buying a house, right? So we had like 2 or 3 days left. And it just happened to rain every day, those 3 days. So the owner's like, okay, fine, whatever, because they can't get a roofer out to look at the roof because they might slip and fall. So they came back, they said, 5 days. I'm like, that's good. That's better than what I thought. I was expecting like 1,000. So I go, should we accept that or should we go back with a higher number? So I'm like, yeah, let's go back. Let's do like 7,000. I would not expect them to give us that. I thought they would come back with like, 5,500 or 6,000. So then I prayed to God again. I'm like, dear God, thank you for blessing me. Please soften the owner's heart, have him see things from our viewpoint, and give us what we ask for. And so the owner finally came back and said, fine, we'll give you what you asked. And then we closed and lived happily ever after. The thing I told you about the house sounds kind of trivial, unimportant, and it's not important. And that's the point. You see, before, I used to think that, God, answers prayers and listen to important people like President Obama or people who have a lot of impact on people. You don't necessarily listen to prayers for unimportant people like me. And especially on prayers on things that are not that important. But see, I was wrong. God does listen and He does grant prayer. So I'm like, God, I dreamt of God twice. One time He gave me an option, heaven and hell. He gave me a sense of how it felt like. So I'm like, what is the problem, Eric? I'm like, there isn't a problem. There's no problem. So that's when I accepted Jesus. So I'm not sure if there's anyone in the audience who hasn't accepted Jesus. If you haven't, it's okay, because it took me 18 years. So I think I hold the world record in terms of how long it takes. So if it took me 18 years before I get baptized, it's okay. Eventually, anyone